Hello, it's Shawnee. Welcome back. So you're gonna see this look, or already saw this look in another video, so surprise or not surprise, but I figured I would just get some mileage out of it since it's already on my face. Today it is time for our weekly roundup, which is where I rank the palettes that I used this week. So as per usual, I have 6 palettes but 5 slots because I put 2 of the palettes together. All right, you'll see that it makes sense. So I'm just going to rank from my least favorite to my most favorite. And that is based on the palettes that I used this week, the looks that I created with those palettes, not necessarily saying that I don't like this palette or anything like that. But it is really helping me to do this, to really identify and make sure that I only have things that I actually really like. And I do like all of these palettes here. There's one that I'm thinking of, do I really still need this? I don't know yet though, okay? So let's start with number 5. Number 5 is the NINHYDRIN palette from Adept Cosmetics. Now, this is, I think, the most recent palette that I have from Adept. I do have their Amunette, Heather Austin, and Plain Jane Remastered. So those are the ones I have along with this one. This one is the more recent one that I picked up. Now, the shimmers are gorgeous. I liked this look, but I will say that it's probably the palette that I like the least out of my Adept Cosmetics palettes. I still really like the formula that they use. I know some people don't like the mattes. I could take or leave the mattes myself, but their multi-chromes and duochromes are just so pretty, and the way that they lay on the eyes is just amazing, and they're just so soft. They're just so soft. It's kind of crazy. They feel so nice and so easy just to like swipe across your eye. So this was in number 5. I like the look that I created, but I like some of the looks that I created with the other palettes a bit more. In number 4, we have the Lorac Fairytale Forest palette, and I enjoyed this palette. It's a pretty neutral palette except for like this side over here where you've got a bit more color. I was sure to use some of these shimmers. Everything applied really well, very easily. I feel like the Lorac formula is pretty solid. I don't hear as many people talk about them, but every time I use one of their palettes I remember like, oh yeah, this is good. Now what I will say, most of their palettes that I have that are this size, I think these are 18 pans, have a lot of the same like neutral like brownie kind of shades. So what I will probably do is I will go through and maybe rearrange the palettes. I have this one, and I also have Soleil and Noir from Lorac. I might go through and rearrange the palettes and just create my own palettes and take out some of the like brownie tan shades from each of them and put together something else. Like, let me show you what I'm talking about. I want you to be able to accurately visualize what I'm saying. So here is the Soleil palette, which I like. Lots of warm tones, but again, a lot of those browns and tans. And here is the Noir palette. So this is just a bit deeper and cooler, but still some shades that I'm like, we can do without that. So at some point I will probably go through and rearrange the palettes and see what other kind of color stories I can put together from these 3. But in number 4, we do have the Fairytale Forest and the look that I did that day. At number 3, we have Lethal Cosmetics Velvet Dusk palette. So what I ended up doing was taking out some of these shades and just putting them into a smaller magnetic palette so that I could do my makeup at work that day. I really enjoy Lethal Cosmetics. I like their eyeshadows. I find that the color, the pigment is always great. I did something relatively simple with this palette this week, but again, and everything shows up beautifully, very well. You can definitely see the pigment, and yeah, they're just really nice. I enjoy their shades, and I also enjoy their face powders. Those are great, and they are some of the favorite things that I've tried out this year. I really liked this look. It was easy to create. It was something just very simple. I like that this is a palette that has color but also has some toned down neutrals that you can use, and it was a lot of fun to use this week. It is in number 3. Now, number 2, we're in our top 2, and the second spot is where I use 2 palettes. That's very fitting, isn't it? Number 2 has 2 palettes. It is NATASHA DENONA. She's in every week, right? The NATASHA DENONA ZENDO palette is one that I use this week. I realize that it's one that I haven't pulled out in quite a while, and I know it's one that gets a lot of shade, but I use that along with the mini ZENDO. So I used both of these together. I just grabbed like one shade from the mini. I primarily focused on the mid-sized palette. I used some of these like greeny, bluish shades over here and really enjoyed them. I was actually kind of surprised. I was like, oh, this is pretty. I don't think that this palette got a ton of love from many people, but I think it's actually pretty. I think it's a pretty palette, and so I'm really glad that I remembered to pull it out and focus on it, because I just don't think in general it gets a lot of love from anyone. And I simply combined the mid-size ZENDO with the mini ZENDO just to give me a little bit more option in some of the tones, and you know, trying to see if they are good companion palettes. I liked using them together, and I do like the ZENDO palette, and it was one of my favorite looks of the week. Number 1, I will let you guess who the brand is. She's like royal or whatever. It's Pat McGrath, and it is her Celestial Odyssey palette. Here it is. I actually ended up doing a look with this on a collab video with my friend Jan. We each decided to use, or both decided to use, this palette and answer some holiday would you rather questions. So make sure you check that out on both of our channels because I think we have some funny answers. Some are the same and some are vastly different. But this is one of Pat McGrath's mega mothership palettes. I think this is the second one. The first one is Celestial Divinity, which I also, I think I used that week before last. So I used this one this week, and I guess I might as well just use the most recent one this coming week, right? And just get them all out the way. I still enjoy this palette. It still performs very well. I really like the colors. Sorry, you can still see some of that ZENDO palette on there. But the colors are really pretty. I tend to like Pat McGrath shadows anyway, and I enjoyed the look that I created with this. I felt super pretty, and kind of like I used a dark lip, which isn't always my thing. So I really just like the way everything came together, and that is why it is in number 1. So, quick recap. We had the NINHYDRIN palette from Adept Cosmetics in number 5. We had Lorac Cosmetics FAIRYTALE Forest palette in number 4. We then had Lethal Cosmetics Velvet Dusk palette in number 3. The mini ZENDO and the mid-size ZENDO from NATASHA DENONA in number 2. And the lovely, the iconic, the influential, the supreme Pat McGrath Celestial Odyssey in number 1. So, tell me about the palettes you used this week. Are there ones that you enjoyed a bit more and ones that you're like, do I still want to keep this in here? Give me an idea of what your week was like with your palettes. I hope that some of this is helpful. I do hope that you are continuing to take care of yourself. I got a massage, I think it was at the beginning of this week, and when I tell you that was the deepest deep tissue massage I've ever gotten, like I almost had to be like, dude, like, are you okay? Like, I feel like you might need to talk about something because you're like taking out a bit of aggression on my lower back. But child, I came out of there feeling like as like limp and wiggly as a noodle. So, also let me know how you're taking care of yourself. Make sure to like the video for me and subscribe if you want. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.